A couple of days ago, I filmed an Instagram video about these two forkless hub center steering bikes, and we got a lot of questions. People wanted me to get into a bit more detail, but on an Instagram reel, I can only talk for 90 seconds. So we're gonna put this video on YouTube so that I can freeform a little bit, explain some things, and then if you have any questions, you can ask in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. What we've got, two bikes here, obviously, a Bimota Tesi 3D Final Edition. This is actually my personal daily commuter, so I do know a little bit more about this. And I think this is cool, but this is even cooler and crazier. This is a Vyrus 985. So what they share in common, they both use double omega frames. So Daniel, our shop manager, gave me this sweet little flashlight. Cannon, if you could come up closer. I'm gonna point out things that you could see even if I didn't use a flashlight, just because I love the flashlight. So double omega. Omega is a reference to the Greek letter, which is in this shape, and double because you've got one of these on either side. So this is what's going to surround the motor. If you're familiar with like a Yamaha GTS 1000, this uses a similar design. So you got the double omega frame on both bikes. You have the forkless hub center steering on both bikes. And we'll get into some extra stuff. But where you do have some differences is going to be, let's just start with the motor, for example. So on my bike, it is an 1100 Evo Ducati motor, wet clutch, couple of updates from the original 1100. You're looking at basically 95 horsepower. This is a whole nother level. If I could have you come closer, this is a Ducati 999R. So it's liquid cooled. Again, use this flashlight for you right here. Oh, just kidding. Right there. So you got a radiator. It is liquid cooled. My Bimota is making 95 horsepower. This thing is making 155. But it is making its power more on the top end. It's really it's like a race homologation motor. Mine's more livable with, I think, in a day-to-day situation, more torquey. That is why I prefer it. I also prefer it because of cost. MSRP on one of these things, brand new. I think Bimota Spirit still has one left. Is going to be roughly $38,000 or so. This thing starts around 67, and it goes up very quickly because you can add lots of fancy options. And so we'll get into that in a little bit as well. If you're not familiar with these companies, Bimota, they're both Italian. Bimota has been around since the 1970s. Vyrus is quite a bit newer. It's actually the brainchild of a former Bimota employee who thought he could do things a little bit better. One of the things that I do agree that he did better has to do with the steering. And so to explain that, I'm actually gonna start on this side with the Bimota. So one of the complaints about the Tesi 3D is your front end field, especially from people who are traditionally used to front forks, because as opposed to the very direct connection between your bars, the triples, the fork to the wheel, this has a lot going on. And conveniently, Daniel's actually taken off the side cover here. So normally this is covered, but this is a little bit more open so I can show you more of what's going on here. So we've got from a handlebar connection, the equivalent to like the bottom triples is going to be this portion here, and that's connected to this rod here, which goes here down to here. So there's a lot of moving parts. This is basically where it's going to be too hard to show it with the phone filming this area, but this portion here is where you get the equivalent, or where you get your steering stop. This is where it happens here to limit the range of motion. And then it actually comes through the Omega frame. And then I get to show off a little bit of bling, because this is number 24 of just 45 final edition bikes that have been created. And we'll do a separate video explaining the difference between the final editions and the originals. But again, so it goes through the frame, and then it goes down to here. And then this is the one arm that controls steering. A lot of times people think that these top arms on either side are related, but these are actually just for brake stabilization purposes. And as you can see here, this angle is actually what sets the rake. But the only thing that's steering this bike is just this arm here. Okay, let's go over to the Vyrus to show how it's similar and how it's different. So I'll tell you what, Ken, let's go on the right side, please, because they actually flip things. I don't know if it's just to be different or because I think it's better. But same thing, right? You got your brake stabilization arms on both ends, but here they do have a little bit better front end feel, I would argue, because there's less connection points, less things getting in the way. So this front end is not propped up. It's a little bit harder to steer it. There's drag from the ground, but you got your bars connected to this kind of stylish piece here. So that goes here, and there's no steering stop. So theoretically it could, and actually I tell you what, if you could point out to people here, this is one thing that I think Vyrus doesn't do so well. That little scuff there is actually from full lock and then the lever hitting the edge. So they don't have a steering stop built into this, but that's how steering is done on the Vyrus. That's a great noise. Another thing that I think Vyrus struggled with a little bit, look, I mean, the motor in this bike is actually, from a displacement standpoint, smaller than the one in my Tesi, but there is, especially because of the liquid cooling, more going on here. And so I'm gonna bust out Daniel's trusty pen light here. You'll see that, I think at one point, I'm guessing, this is a client's bike here. You can see that we got a Rizoma clear cover here for the timing belts, but there's only one. This side, to install that cover, would require disassembling a bunch of this, and we're actually going to get to that later. So instead, for the brake stabilization arm to clear, they kind of just cut this carbon fiber cover here, and so you got this weird like half open. It's just kind of an odd situation here, but it's what was required so you didn't get things rubbing against each other or pinching or anything like that. So that's a little goofy. But that carbon fiber is sort of a good segue, because, I mean, look at this. This frame here, this really cool intake here, everything is exposed carbon fiber. The Tesi's got pretty much carbon fiber bodywork except for the tank, but as you can see here, this is carbon fiber everywhere. And that is one of the many reasons why this is worth, or at least they charge, quite a bit more than the Bimota does. Go ahead, I'm gonna walk around, but you can even see here, you got a crazy race dash, you've got all these controls, Brembo 16 RCS and 19 RCS master cylinders. It's really, really fantastic. This is such a cool cockpit view here. It's a great place to look at. It's not really a great place to be in, because as you can see here, this, as Canon put it a little bit earlier, this is not much of a seat. I mean, you just got this tiny foam pad, and then when you sit on it, I mean, these edges kind of hurt your thighs. This was definitely a form over function kind of section. On the other hand, look, I'm not going to pretend this is comfortable, but it's definitely way more livable. Again, I use this as a daily commuter, and I actually just rode this bike up to Monterey and back for our Laguna Seca track day. So I rode this up, did some sessions, and I apologize because I had to end up driving a truck back, so I didn't ride this back. But this thing is incredibly more comfortable than that. There is a tiny little passenger seat. My girlfriend has 100,000 miles on the back of the bike. She considers this to be the second least comfortable bike she's ever ridden on, partly because of the seat, partly because of the pegs. I mean, there isn't much width there. And for those of you that are curious, her least favorite bike to ride on the back of, Harley Sportster, rubber mounted. So anyway, so one of the things I wanted to talk about was, I guess the way I want to end this video without talking about for another 10 minutes, is why I actually bought one of these versus, say, a Vyrus or another Hub Center bike. And the main reason, or one of the main reasons I should say, has to do with maintenance. We had one of these, a previous generation Vyrus, come in earlier in the shop, and Daniel, our shop manager, had to work on it. It needed timing belts, common thing for a Ducati motor, obviously, and it was roughly a 16-hour job. If you could come over here, Cannon, kind of point out why. Again, this isn't the exact same bike, but this is also why I think whoever installed this cover just didn't even bother to do this, because you have to take apart, you got to take the front swing arm off. So on the Tesi, the front swing arm is actually, there's an axle that goes through the whole thing and clear, it goes under the cylinders. This is just a bolt on either side, bolted to the frame. Oh, we've got a little visitor. Everyone say hi to Cody. Hi, Cody. Hi, Daniel, who runs our shop. Oh. So to do anything to this portion of the motor, whether it's replacing the covers, whether it's doing the belts, you're taking this whole thing apart. And again, if you had to guess, what, 16 hours was it roughly on the last Vyrus you did?
That's a long time.
Something like that, yeah. That adds up. And so, again, you got to basically take apart. You got to take apart the front swing arm. You got to take apart the right half of the frame, and then you still have to support the weight of that. So while you're working on it, you got to figure out some way to prop all that up. On the Tesi, however, I'm not saying this is the easiest bike to work on. However, you can actually, the way they've built the frame, sorry, come closer, good sir. The way they've built the frame and done this, you can access all the bolts for the timing belt covers. And, you know, if I wanted to put carbon fiber covers on it or clear covers or whatever it might be, or more importantly, if I just want to replace the belts on them, that can be done without taking the entire bike apart. So actually, before I bought this, I did talk to Daniel and I wanted to confirm, hey, when I need to do belts on my commuter, are we gonna have to take the entire bike apart? And when he said, no, we can make it work, that was kind of the final decision for me to make that happen. So I'm sure I missed a little thing here or there. Daniel definitely knows more about these than I do, but I just wanted to get into more detail, more than the 90 seconds that Instagram allows me to talk about these really interesting bikes, because one of the things I love about Iconic here is that we get things like this to work on a regular basis. So if you have any questions or you want some more information, things like that, let us know in the comments and I'll do my best to respond. As always, thanks for watching.